A big thanks to Cheddar's Chef for sponsoring this episode.
I'm going to use a special technique to make my steak extra crispy and extra tasty in the crust. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I stole this technique from another style of cooking. This thing comes straight from garlic shrimps. Everybody that ever had garlic shrimp loves it so much because of the garlic flavor, the richness, and especially that golden crust that's been built up on the outside. Why not take that crust and put it on a steak? This is a whole ribeye. A beautiful piece of meat with dark red color, a nice amount of fat on the inside. A beautiful, tender, flavorful cut of beef. And I'm going to cut it up into steaks. I cut them about a 1 finger thick. I don't want to go too thick and I don't want to go too thin either. Thick steaks means you're going to have a juicy steaks, and thin steak means it's going to cook faster. Now that is really important because if I want that crust to be golden brown and tasty just like with garlic shrimp, I can't be cooking it too long. And that's why this is thinner than I would normally cut my ribeye steak. And the other part of adding flavor onto that crust is power and heat from a hot surface. And that's why I already fired up my Cheddar's Chef grill. I started by chopping up some small kindle for my fire. And that kindle is made out of birch tree, which is going to burn up really quick. I'm going to put in 3 fire starters, light it up, and make sure that I get a nice base fire going. Then I'm switching over to beech wood, which is going to give me stronger embers that burn for a longer period of time and keep my plate hot. And as you can see now, I have a super hot plate. You can see it from this circle that runs around the table. The outside I have a lower temperature and I can switch between them to get my steaks absolutely perfect. Besides the ring, we also have a grill grate in the center, in which I can remove the center round and add more firewood so that I can keep my fire going at all times. And to make sure that my steaks don't stick, I'm going to season the whole plate. A little bit of plant-based oil with a high smoke point will do the job. Just rub it in. And now we're getting that non-stick surface, and those steaks are just gonna slide on them like Disney on ice. You never been on Disney on ice? Maybe we should go together, Morrison. Non-stick, shiny like a mirror? Woo! We should cook an egg on it to show people how non-stick this is. Ta-da! I'm going to make the PitmasterX classic barbecue mix with 2 tablespoons of salt, a tablespoon of paprika powder, a tablespoon of onion powder, and half a tablespoon of garlic powder. Then I'm going to mix it all up, and this is the real magic of what we're going to do. I'm going to take this, the PitmasterX classic barbecue rub, and mix it with this all-purpose flour. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of that PitmasterX classic barbecue rub on a plate, followed by the same amount of all-purpose flour. Now this is going to sound weird, but what I want you to do is take your finger, lick it and stick it in. There we go. And then you put it back in your mouth, like that. And then it should taste like raw flour, but very tasty raw flour. And that's exactly what I need. I need you to understand this is going to be the crust on your steak, and it should taste like a freaking amazing crust. Even though I now get that raw flour flavor in my mouth, which is not great, but that's all gonna change. Then one by one, I'm gonna put my steaks in and dust them off. I want a really light coat of this flour on my steak, not a heavy one, just a real light one. I'm gonna put 15 cloves of garlic in my blender, grind them up, add a little bit of olive oil and grind them down even finer. Then I'm gonna chop up some parsley, cut a lemon in half. Now I've got all my ingredients prepared. Got my parsley, lemon, garlic, butter, salt and pepper. Which means we can do our favorite part. Oh wait, before I forget, I want to use a thermometer in my steaks. That is not typical when cooking this way, but it takes the guessing out of knowing when the steak is done. First thing to do now is put a pan on the fire and let it become warm. Now the cool thing is I can play around with that because I got a cold zone and I got a hot zone. I can put it straight over the flames where it becomes nice and hot, or I can move it over here a little bit where it's more of a moderate heat. And that's what I need. All I need to do is melt some butter. And for this to melt but not burn requires a moderate heat. Once it melted, I'm going to add the rest of the ingredients, which is the parsley, the garlic, the lemon juice, and of course, a tablespoon of salt for seasoning and a teaspoon of fresh ground pepper. This is what I need. This is a pan filled with flavor. Oh yeah. You want to go higher? You want me to touch the camera?
No.
This is like doing a cannonball in a swimming pool. And people tell you to not hit the ceiling. What do people then do? Try and hit the ceiling. That's right. So if you're telling me to hit the ceiling, we're gonna hit the ceiling. Time to put the steaks on and start grilling. Of course, I'm gonna lay down a little bit of that butter first. Then I'm gonna put my steak on. Because I'm looking to get a beautiful crust. I'm gonna make sure the steak makes good contact. I'm a bit of a freak, but I love to see things like this. I can see the core temperature of my ribeye steak, 12 degrees Celsius. I set it to 54 at an alarm. And this is the surrounding temperature of 33 degrees Celsius. Which means the surroundings of my thermometer are not that hot. So the heat has to travel through the steak because it's not getting any heat from the surroundings. Therefore, I cut my steaks thin exactly as I thought I needed to. And with the thermometer, I just got that confirmation. Of course, I'm going to check to see what that crust looks like. And that looks freaking amazing. Now that I know I don't need to put a thermometer in all of my steaks, but this is the way that I know for my first steak, and I can continue with all these steaks to follow to use the same technique, the same time as I learned from my first steak. Almost like making one of those Italian, like hoe heet dat? Zo'n ding. Schnitzel. Schnitzel paradise, brother. A little bit more of that butter with the garlic. The thermometer tells me 6 minutes to go. I can see here how the chart's going up. The temperature of the thermometer, of the core of the meat, is just shooting up. And I can tell you, this is going to be done in less than 6 minutes. Building up a beautiful crust, building up that flavor. A little bit more butter. Then I'm going to take it off and let it rest with that butter. Look at that. Beautiful crust, and you can see the flour and the seasoning has been building up, creating a nice layer of flavor. You can even, if you damage it, you can see the meat underneath. But the part that sits on the edge of my knife, that is the crust and that is the flavor. You see, it's been cooked to perfection. Super juicy, super tasty. Look at that. The perfect steak. And there you have it in your arsenal of ways to cook a steak. This is another one. But what does it taste like? We have our first intern, so I'm really proud of our first intern. Please taste our steak.
Very good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh. Wow. I have another one.